Your presence is greatly appreciated, and as we discuss the topic shaping the future of food and agri-biotechnologies. As Therese's will mention, I served as a shadow rapporteur for the Renew on Parliament's own initiative report, The Future of the EU Biotech Manufacturing, the so-called INI. And this report was, this issue was tabled in the spring and was agreed with a great consensus already some months ago. So this is, I think, a very good start. And also in that rope, I deep my understanding of the sector and work hard to ensure that the biotechnology contribution to a competitive and sustainable and resilient economy is clearly recognized, and to convince my colleagues of the need for a broad scope. And I say that's quite deliberately broad scope, because we have a discussion, some of you will know, within these walls about just the narrow or broad the scope should be when it comes to biotech. And I think I bring you some good news that the other day, last week, we got the news that it seems that this area is divided competence-wise between the Hungarian Commissioner and Commissioner Stefan Sejourné, and he's responsible for the growth and industrial capacities and the whole area surrounding the Draghi report's conclusions. And why is that important? It is important because we were running the risk of this area just narrowed down to the pharmaceuticals, and that would be a shame, a big shame. Not to say economic development catastrophe. So I think that it's very good that the Commission now realizes that this is going to be a shared competence. So we look, of course, looking forward to that. It goes without saying that Europe's competitiveness is under pressure. This is both an economic and a strategic issue that risks our global influence, resilience, and independence. We need decisive and coordinated action to strengthen it, and a strong, innovative European biotechnology sector must be a part of this solution. This is my firm belief, and I think more and more colleagues in this House realize that also. We still have some way to go. It's not that we disagree with colleagues, it's just that we still need to build up some awareness of this, and this meeting today is, of course, a part of that. Commissioner Sejourné's role is to oversee the non-pharmaceutical industrial components of the Act, and this is, of course, as I mentioned, key to unlocking innovation in food and agricultural biotechnologies. As you know, and you know that better than me, biotech and biosolutions are no longer in their infancy. They're ready to scale, to tackle global challenges, and to strengthen both resilience and competitiveness. Over the past decade, the number of food biotech companies has grown by nearly 300%. Yet, limited market access, financial gaps, insufficient infrastructure, and low consumer acceptance still hold a lot of them back from fully scaling and delivering sustainable solutions. Biotechnologies can transform entire industries. They can reduce our dependence on fossil-based resources, chemicals, energy, and water, while keeping European industry competitive and driving this decarbonization. I think the importance of biotechnology is widely recognized in Commissioner's mission letters, in the Competitiveness Compass, in Draghi's report, which I was mentioning before, and in President Ursula von der Leyen's political guidelines, which call on Europe to, quote, make the most of the biotech revolution, unquote. This mandate and the legislation ahead offer a great opportunity to create the right conditions for biotechnology, biomanufacturing, and biosolutions to scale in Europe. I look forward to this discussion and to hearing your ideas on how we can overcome the challenges and seize the opportunities ahead, ensuring Europe remains at the forefront of global innovation. And I will pass the floor to Therese now to guide us through the rest of today's discussion. Thank you very much, and have a good day.
Thanks a lot, Martin, for framing elegantly this discussion. I would have been doing that better. So thanks for facilitating my work. Perhaps I would just add some words of practicalities for today. So the event is hosted by Martin, is organized by the European Food Forum, a non-partisan multi-stakeholder platform, co-led and co-governed by members of the European Parliament. The idea is very much to have an open conversation, so I will encourage everybody to raise your hands, pose your questions, both here in the room, but we also have an online presence, so for the friends following online, just put a question in the chat box and we will follow up. Also, feel free to share anything you would like to do on social media. The forum has two beautiful hashtags, so let's talk about food and the EU Food Dialogue. Please interact online as well. And I think we are ready to go. We have great panelists. The idea of today is very much to talk about the microbiology application in the agri-food chain. We will discover it together with the academias as well with the industries. And then we will try to do a more visionary exercise with the Commission and the rest of the panelists on how the future of the biotech sector may look like, building, of course, on the Commission's communication on biotech by manufacturing and keeping an eye on the bioeconomic strategy as well on the EU Biotech Act. So I think we are a little bit delayed. I can see Soren has arrived. Please, Soren, come here and sit. We have I don't want to put you on the spotlight, but the chair is waiting for you. Then no problem, we just started.
Hi.
And I will just pass, I will introduce the first speaker, Piet. They're just in front of me. Professor Piet van der Meer, you are trained as a biologist and as a lawyer, and have worked in the GMO space since 1996. For many of us, that's a long time, like me. Since 2006, you have been teaching biotech regulation at both Ghent University and the University of Brussels, and with you, we will walk through the origin, the present, and the future of biotech in agriculture and food. And I believe you have some slides, right?
I do indeed, yeah. Can I get my slides? Oh, this is what I say, slide or click? I forgot.
Slides when you want to change slides and click when you want to go.
Okay. So while we're looking for the slides, a small correction. Actually, I'm involved in this field since 1986, so the time of your grandparents, I guess. I'm Dutch, and full disclosure, I'm not a biotechnologist. I'm a biologist, so I'm not involved in this field, but I've seen it as a former regulator and a teacher now. I've seen the field passing by, so that's what I'm sharing with you. I'm also an academic member of the European Food Forum, and with that I will start quickly my introduction. The origins, present, and the future of biotech. Slide, please. So first about the definition. It's difficult to discuss something without a definition. Unfortunately, there are hundreds of definitions of biotechnology around. I take the one that I like best from the Biodiversity Convention. Click. Oh, yeah, I have the system. That's good. And it means basically any technological application of organisms, of living things to produce products or services. Slide. The origins of biotech, biotechnology. Click. This is going to take a long time. Actually, I recommend whoever is doing the clicks here just keep going. I'll keep pace. Are you doing this? No. Oh. Now you're going a little bit too fast. So leave it at this. So the term biotechnology is about 100 years old. There was probably a Hungarian, Károly Ereky, who came with the first time with the term. But biotechnology itself is thousands of years old. We've been making cheese and wine for many, many millennia. And in doing so, humans have tried to change microorganisms, animals, plants to actually better perform and better fit their needs. Click, slide. Either way, good. This is a slide just giving you an idea of what has changed over the millennia, how our ancestors have changed things that they found in the wild, bananas, radishes, stone fruits, cotton, and so forth, what they looked like thousands of years ago and what they look like today. This is very impressive. Next slide, please. This is one of my favorite slides. This is all just trial and error, how our ancestors have collected things from the fields. They saw a mutation that they liked. They selected it and moved on. And look what happened with cabbage. It developed in many things, and very appropriately it ended up here as Brussels sprouts in the 1700s. Next slide. Now, all of that is just trial and error. It was a lottery because they had no idea how this worked. They saw something worked. So farmers, and in the beginning those were women who did that. They found something that their men brought back from the fields. It grew in the fields. They grew it again. They saw an interesting change, something they liked, and they kept breeding with it. So for very long it was trial and error. And then, fortunately, in the 19th century there was Gregor Mendel, an Austrian monk scientist, who developed the laws of inheritance. He did all his wonderful tests with peas, and he figured out that it is actually very discrete units of inheritance that are blue-eyed and not something spread all over. It's in a few genes, so it's a very discrete unit. And later we started calling those genes. Next, please. So this is just a little diagram on how he did his work. Next slide, please. I'm racing a little bit through because I'm aware of the time here. This is just, and I use this for my law students. Crossing, so getting new characteristics in an organism, let's say a maize plant, that grows well here, now let's stick to Denmark, that grows well in Denmark. We call it an elite variety for Denmark, but there's one problem, it's susceptible to a fungus. We know, the Danes know that in Germany, there is a variety that has with the green little dot, has fungus resistance, and what breeders do is they just cross the two, right? This is your biology class, and then you end up 50% of the father, the mother, and then we have 50-50 of those genes. And I have this deliberately, you can see these are distinct units, a gene as a basis for a trait. But then you have something that is a mixture of thousands and thousands of genes, and actually what the Danish farmer wants is something that is mostly white and preferably only the green. So in order to get that, you cross the one on the right back with the white one, and then you have 75-25%. And you keep doing this and doing this. Next, please. And we call that back crossing. So it takes quite some time, but then you have something that looks mostly like the plant that grows well in Denmark. Now you're going a really bit too fast. But
It's a bit catch up, right? No worries.
This,
We have time.
no, he's running me out.
Yeah.
I don't know where he is.
Has to go back.
Go one slide back. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, okay.
So this worked. No, this is fine. This is fine. Yeah, so this worked very well. And so since the mid-19th century, we have seen breeding just exploding in many, many directions. Next slide, please. Now it's resisting. And as a result, we have a phenomenal variety of food on our plates every day. So generally, there's a lot of food production in the world. Our food security depends really on breeding, or has depended. And then we go to the next slide. So conventional breeding, we call this conventional breeding. You cross to mother and father plant or animal. It has been crucial for food security, but it has a number of limitations. Yes, next few buttons. It can take very long because of the back crossing. And you can imagine if you do this with trees, with plum trees, you have to wait a number of years until there are flowers, and then you can cross. So it can take decades before you have crossed in an interesting trait from a tree into another tree. And for some species it is extremely difficult. Potatoes, bananas, it's almost impossible to cross bananas. Even if you found something that's interesting, most of the bananas are the same variety, Cavendish. And next time you go to the supermarket, you see a box for bananas, it will say variety Cavendish. 99% of the bananas from sub-Saharan Africa are just Cavendish, which is tricky because they're all the same genetic background, so they're very vulnerable. If there's a disease, then it will move ahead. And then the last bullet, this crossing only works between related species. So if I found a wonderful fungus resistance in wheat, that's nice, but I can never cross it into maize because wheat and maize do not cross over the species barrier. So these are a number of the limitations that breeders have experienced for quite some time. Next slide, please. And what we've seen in the 19th and the 20th century, some spectacular scientific developments to overcome this. First, at the beginning of the 20th century, we had something called embryo rescue. So potatoes are difficult to cross. One of the reasons is that because once the fertilization takes place, it doesn't grow any further. So then there's a trick, what they call embryo rescue. It's still two related potato species, varieties, but with embryo rescue, you can actually make that work. You can help the process going on. Then there's something called induced mutagenesis, and if we can stick to this bullet point for a second. So what breeders do in the field, they see every now and then there's a mutation. If there's a mutation, it means that the DNA of that particular variety was broken. The double-stranded DNA was broken, so the two strands were broken, and then the mechanism in the DNA, in the cell itself, repairs that. And normally the repair takes care of this using the template, because we have two pieces of DNA. So if this breaks, no problem, because here's the template, so the DNA repair mechanism makes sure that it's exactly the same. This happens every second of the day in our bodies too. DNA breaks, it's being repaired. However, if it breaks, both of them break, then there's no longer a template to fix that. And then you get a mutation, because then the DNA repair mechanism just randomly starts adding things and eating away things. And that's what we call a mutation. But that is very slow, because you may have one or two in a field. And in the 20s, they discovered something, is that you can induce that by exposing plant material to radiation, to chemicals. As a result, you get thousands and thousands of double-stranded breaks, so you get many more mutations. In most cases, those are useless, those plants die, or they're not very good, but every now and then there's an interesting one in there. Example, pink grapefruit. Pink grapefruit was subjected to these inducing materials, and then suddenly there was a mutation, pink grapefruit. Tastes better, it looks better than the yellow ones, right? There are 2,000 to 3,000 varieties on the market that we eat every day. And those are created in this way. There's a database from the FAO where you can find all these varieties. So induced mutagenesis is one of the ways to speed up this process, because the speed was one of the limitations. Then we started to understand more of the whole system. We already knew there's something called genes, the 3 units that are responsible for our traits. Then we had, of course, the fabulous discovery of the building blocks of our DNA, Watson and Crick in 1953. And we can move on to the next. And then there were a number of discoveries of enzymes that can actually cut our DNA on specific spots. We call those restriction enzymes. They come from viruses and they can cut. Those enzymes allowed us to move genes around. Next one, this happened for the first time in 1972, whether between microorganisms, viruses and bacteria. Then in 1983, next one.
Peter, I would just to ask you to wrap up.
Wrapping up, oh dear,
we got to the end.
I have to jump very hard. So I'm going to jump over these slides. So in 1983, we had the first applications of these techniques, moving genes around between species. Yeah, next bullet. Or next slide. So next bullet. Next, yeah. So this is just a summary of this. Instead of mixing thousands of genes, you can now just cut a gene and place it from one place to the other, with all the advantages that comes with that. Next slide, please. Next slide. Then the next step was gene editing. Next slide, please. And next. So in gene editing, we do not just randomly throw a gene in there somewhere. We can fix a gene on the spot, either knock it out or either repair it or what have we. Next. Next. Today is the new development in bioinformatics, AI. Next. So I'm going to skip over these slides very quickly. This was the origin. The present of biotech is just very diverse. It's a hugely diverse field, so it's very difficult to discuss it as one thing. So if you can quickly go through all these bullets, it ranges, and you can read this afterwards, you get this PowerPoint. But you can have many, many types of techniques that are out there. So we refer to biotechnologies in general. Next slide, please. It's not only that we have multiple technologies, it's being applied in plants, microorganisms, and animals. Next slide. Next slide, please. This slide gives you an idea of what's happening in animal. Next slide, please. Next bullet. So it happens in many areas, ranging from agriculture to medicine. Next bullet. For many purposes, you see them here, and then the last bullet on this slide. Last bullet. And this happens in the public research and the private sector. I'm coming to my last few slides. Just go ahead. Next slide. The future of biotech is related to governance. We have all the technological developments, but if governance is poor, then we have no idea where we're going. So the future of biotech will depend on the directions of it, on governance. Last slide, please. So I want to say a few words about governance, because that's my own field. Starts in 1972, the famous conference on the human environment in Stockholm, that started me off working for the environment, and I've done it ever since. We were all very proud, but then we discovered that about 10 years, that just talk about the environment is not enough. You have to talk about the environment and developments. Developing countries need to have the opportunity to develop in order to be able to protect the environment. So 20 years later, we had the Rio Conference on Environment and Development. Those had 40 big chapters in Agenda 21, dealing with huge areas such as biodiversity, oceans, mountains, and so forth. And only one technology is mentioned in there, chapter 16 on biotechnology. And it's very important because it says in that document, it can make a significant contribution to sustainability. It is unknown in a certain way, so therefore we look at risk assessment. Next bullet. So that was followed or galvanized, that idea, in the Convention on Biological Diversity. Next bullet. And the Convention on Biological Diversity says, first place, every country should have a system in place for safety. Article 8. Next. And then comes a very important statement here. Article 16 states, and this is internationally agreed, that biotechnology is not a nice hobby, it is essential for the objectives of the Convention on Biodiversity. It's stated in there. And on the basis of that, the next bullet, there is the obligation for every country that has the technology to share it with countries that do not yet have the technology. And then I come to my last bullet. Yep. So this was further worked out in the Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety, that is about transboundary movement. And there you see the motto that I'll hope will be discussion also later today when we talk about the Biotech Act. Yes, last bullet. And there you find a very nice phrase, that the motto for governance in this field is to maximize benefits and minimize potential risks. And this has governed us for the last, 25 years in this field as the overall approach of governments toward biotechnology. Maximize the benefits, minimize potential risks. That's it.
Thanks a lot, Chris. On behalf of the forum, apologies for the marathon, but it was very instructive. I think everybody has now some fundamental in order to approach the rest of the panel, and also would like to welcome Rosalinda from the DG Research. So we have a very equipped table. We will now go from theory to practice because we have two industry speakers. We have one joining online. So Tien van Voet, Head of Commercial from Micro Harvest, an SME headquartered in Germany, working with microbial fermentation. Tien, can you hear us? Is your microphone working?
Yes, I'm dialing in separately for the audio. So can you hear me well?
Yes, we can.
Good.
Are you ready? The floor is yours.
So you just told me to go ahead, right? Just to check.
Yes, I did.
Right. So I'm dialing in separately with my phone, so that's why. But good afternoon, everybody, and first of all, thank you for this invitation. So today I'm speaking on behalf of Food Fermentation Europe, which represents companies advancing modern fermentation in Europe. And in my day-to-day job, I lead commercialization of fermentation at Micro Harvest, which is a biomass fermentation company with offices in two European member states, so both Portugal and Germany. So I see both the sectoral picture and the operational realities. And modern fermentation is the umbrella term actually for using microorganisms and controlled bioprocesses to make food and ingredients that are sustainable and reliable and at scale. And for our current agri-food sector, two types I would say matter most. So that's biomass fermentation and precision fermentation. And let me explain that shortly. So with biomass fermentation, we grow microorganisms like yeast, bacteria, or fungi as a direct source for protein or nutrition. And the resulting biomass can be used as food or feed ingredients, and that offers high nutritional value with smaller environmental footprint. And this is as old as bread and yogurt, as has just been explained. And if we talk, on the other hand, about precision fermentation, that's about programming microorganisms to produce specific ingredients, such as proteins, fats, or vitamins. And that combines traditional fermentation with modern biotechnology, and that is also already widely used for, let's say, enzymes or dairy processing. But beyond the technology that has already been quite nicely explained by the previous speaker, what really matters is that modern fermentation helps to unlock at least 3 essential benefits, namely food security, competitiveness, and sustainability. And doing so together with the European farmers, processors, retailers, and even consumers. So first of all, we talk about the benefit of competitiveness. This is really relevant because Europe is currently in a great position to lead in bioprocess engineering, enzymes, and food-grade manufacturing. That could keep skills, jobs, and value in European regions. And this could also open new markets for farmers by allowing them to valorize side streams and byproducts that would otherwise go to waste or for a very low price. And for consumers, Europe could enhance familiar foods with complementary fermentation-made ingredients to improve taste and performance, for example. And secondly, if we talk about enhancing food security, this could be a key benefit as well through adding reliable, scalable capacity that runs year-round, providing a backstop when weather or geopolitics tighten other supplies. It could also help us in Europe to shorten supply chains by using European feedstocks, including side streams, and by creating a stable demand for these byproducts, and support feed ingredients that ease pressure on the quite large or significant share of imported proteins nowadays. So our partners across farming and food manufacturing can plan with a greater level of certainty, I would say. And the final benefit is sustainability, because modern fermentation enables us to produce more from less, basically. It lowers land and water use and offers us the ability to valorize side streams and produce consistent quality and translate that into measurable gains across, let's say, the scope 3 emissions. So just to conclude this brief contribution, so these are exciting times for Europe with new opportunities, and modern fermentation is definitely not a silver bullet, but it is a proven industrially mature set of tools that could help Europe to make more from less and work together with farmers and food manufacturers and retailers and consumers. And the members of Food Fermentation Europe are ready to partner across Europe's chain, and I'm looking forward to the discussion. Thank you. I can't hear any audio, is that correct?
Are we good? Can you hear us?
Yeah. I can hear you again. Yeah.
Great. Okay. We will now move to the second speaker, to the Netherlands, with Anne Klok, Director for Research and Development of Enzymes and DSM Firmenich, where you lead the research and development at the intersection of biotech and food system. And you will give us an example how our ancestor craft the cheese making.
Yeah.
So please,
Yes.
Anna, the floor is yours.
Yeah, and I will need some help to pass around
Yes.
the cheese to make this come a bit more alive than just words, because the proof is in the pudding or the proof is in the cheese in this case. So this is a variety of cheeses that come from different European countries. Just put it on the table. We'll do the explanation later, because I think it is about biotech, and most of you are probably familiar with the concept of cheese. So thank you for the introduction. I am actually a biotechnologist, so I hope to educate you even more on biotech in that sense. So indeed, my field of expertise is enzymes, and I work at DSM Firmenich. For those of you that do not know DSM Firmenich, it's actually a newly constructed company of two big companies, DSM, which is from Dutch origin, and Firmenich, which is from Swiss origin. So we're now a Swiss company, and we're a global leader in health, nutrition, and bioscience. And our company was built on over 100 years of scientific discovery. So I can say we basically experienced the entire biotechnology history that was just explained. So at DSM-Firmenich we know biotech and we know cheese. So cheese is one of those products that is very much linked to Europe. It has a lot of diversity, so it really reflects all the cultural diversities I think that are here in Europe. And it is based on traditions that go back centuries, right? It was mentioned today already. But would you be able to tell what the biotechnology in such a piece of cheese is? So the three basic ingredients going into cheese are milk, microorganisms, and enzymes. Right, and microorganisms is a fascinating field, but my expertise is enzymes, so I'll dive into that. So do you know what an enzyme is then? Enzymes are specialty proteins. They're actually proteins, and they're omnipresent in nature. Like in every living cell, you'll have enzymes, and in those cells, they act as, you could call them catalysts that accelerate certain chemical processes. And they help us in our bodies, but they're also present in food. So in our bodies, they help with digestion, turn nutrients into energy. In food, they make bread rise, they make beer taste good, and they turn milk into cheese. So why did I choose cheese? Because obviously cheese tastes good. There's a strong relation to Europe, right? It's one of the oldest examples of biotech in food, but it's also quite important for Europe because we are one of the largest cheese producers and consumers. So you could say that cheese is more than good food for Europe. It's a symbol of a diverse culture, our innovation power, and our economic strength. So just some numbers on economics. So the average world production, the current world production of cheese is worth about 150 billion euros. So I had to look up some reference numbers. So that is the GDP of Hungary. And as Europe, we're responsible for a third of that, which is no surprise because on average we consume about 20 kilos per year. Well, from the Netherlands, probably my average is a bit higher, but it gives you an idea, right? And from that 50 million that is produced, or worth in euros, that is produced in Europe, we export about 15%. And now the cheese market is still growing in Europe, in the US, but we now see, let's say, emerging regions outpacing them, right? So that also illustrates the potential that is there economically. So now we have an idea what we're talking about when we talk about cheese. Let's go back to the technology. So it is one of humanity's oldest biotechnology examples, and it's all because of an enzyme called chymosin. So centuries ago, people discovered if they would store milk in animal stomachs, which was the norm back then, very often it would spontaneously curdle into cheese. That's how it was discovered. But it is an enzyme that is behind it, and the enzyme is used in the animal stomach to break down nutritious proteins, and it's the breakdown of the proteins that causes a network to form, which is the curdling, which turns into cheese then. So then if we talk about technology and technology breakthrough, we have to fast forward a bit in history. We go to the 1970s. That is actually when it was discovered that you could find enzymes not just in these animal stomachs, but also under microorganisms. So an example here is from a fungus called Rhizomyces dormii. That's rennet. And it was found that rennet could do exactly the same as the chymosin from calf stomachs. And global production at the moment is about 20 to 30% of cheeses are made with this microbial rennet, how we call it. The next innovation came about 10 years later. You've seen it also in the slides on the history of biotech. In the 1980s, it was discovered that we could produce the animal chymosin in a microorganism by inserting the gene of that microorganism of that animal enzyme into a microorganism. So that is in fact the first precision fermented chymosin. In the 1980s already, I know it's a hot term now, but in the 1980s we were doing this, and in the 1990s it was introduced in the market. At the time, we had actually a global rennet shortage, so this was the solution to that. And right now, 90% of cheeses in the US is produced with this type of product. In Europe, we're approaching the 60%. So over the decades after the 1990s, we saw this transition of traditional animal rennet towards rennet that is produced from fermentation origins. And it's mainly consumer preference or certification, right? If you want to label kosher, halal, or vegetarian, but also cost. It's cheaper. But then, another fun fact, this innovation in rennet is actually driven by European biotech. Because it's the big enzyme producers, DSM Firmenich being one, Novo Nordisk, Danish colleagues, IFF, I know it's an American corporation, but it has very strong biotech roots in Europe. They are behind these innovations. So we're not only the world's largest cheese market, but we're also the global leader in enzyme biotechnology. So that really illustrates the potential, right? Especially if you think about it, rennet is just one of those applications of enzymes in food. So over 300 applications have been received by the Commission for the Union list, actually. So they're almost all biotech-derived innovation, and they contribute to Europe's food security, quality, and sustainability. So a continued investment in the biotech sector is actually essential for Europe's competitiveness in agriculture, in the food manufacturing, and in innovation. I think the example of cheese showed that biotech brings economic value and opportunity. It's key to food security and strategic independence because it reduces our relying on global supply chains. And finally, it has shown you that biotech-driven innovations are fundamental for achieving a global food transition. The history of rennet has showed how biotech basically aided the food transition by transforming how we produce cheeses already years ago. So next time you have a piece of cheese, just think about it. Behind every slice, there's a story of scientific progress and European ingenuity. So biotech helped Europe to preserve tradition and meet the modern demands of today. And I believe actually biotech will bring us the sustainable future for food for Europe. Yes. Now the question is, which cheese indeed has microorganism-based rennet in it?
So does it mean that we need to taste it all?
You can guess. This is a Dutch cheese, a goat's cheese. I think that is also Dutch. That is maybe the signs got confused. That could
This
be
one is Dutch.
Yeah, it should be turned around. That's the Spanish. This is Dutch.
This is Italian.
Yeah, there's an Italian one there. There's a French, and this is actually a British one. And I doubted whether I should put the European flag in it. Let's do it. This is produced with microbial enzymes, so I'm pretty sure it's European microbial enzymes. So that one I will give away. But
Thank you very much, Anna. And thanks also for bringing like an afternoon snack.
Yeah,
Or like a good tea. So very appreciated, and also for the practical example, so we can all resonate, and also the image of the cow I think is quite symbolic. I would also like to say that we have the IFF representative, so Anna Maria, if you feel like intervening, please come forward. But we have now a small space for Q&A. So I'm just looking around the table if there are any questions from the people present. Yes, Claire?
Yeah, thank you very much. So I'm Claire Scantleberry from Europa Bio, and super happy to see our members in the room who are real champions for biotech. But for me, this is always worth a conversation about what this means globally for Europe. So I would love to know if our members around the table or companies around the table can tell us how they're seeing biotech fermentation in food growing in other regions as a comparison for Europe, because it's not just about Europe being like 5% better at something. If another region is 25% better at something, we're not improving quickly enough. So I'd love to have any feedback on how you're seeing fermentation and market entry in other regions of the world.
Feel free to respond.
Yeah, I think that was also one of the examples that I tried to make with cheese production specifically, but there's an analogy in many examples of enzymes produced in food. We see emerging regions in growth outpacing the market, right? The market that we're used to in Europe, North America. So there's huge potential there, and what they typically want to see is a version, maybe a regional version of the same products that we have here. Which means that the underlying technologies are just as relevant. To produce cheese, you need enzymes. They need to come from somewhere. So
you're seeing the enzyme manufacturing scale up in other regions globally?
Could be if you want to keep it local, right? Could also be a matter of producing it in Europe or through European countries and supplying it elsewhere. It could be both. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Any following up questions from the room? I'm also looking behind me. Yes, Julia.
I was just wondering, talking about competitiveness, so what's the situation for SMEs to access this space and remain in the market and participate in the biotech revolution, so to say, talking about food specifically?
Julia, sorry, a word about where you're from.
Sorry. So Julia Tarsidano from Hanover Communication at PA Consultants in Brussels.
Could you help me on the abbreviation for SME, because I've heard it, but
Small and medium enterprises.
Right.
So yeah, exactly. How can we make sure that this biotech revolution is something where we can actually provide opportunities for small and medium enterprises in the EU?
What for me immediately comes to mind is actually regulation. From experience, this is one of the most, let's say, difficult things for us as industry to actually bring something to the market. We're getting more unified frameworks now, but it does require a whole team of experts to actually get in. It's quite an exercise, and I can imagine for SMEs this is something that is quite difficult. We see also us as companies partnering with let's say, innovative companies that are looking for ways into, so we're helping there. But I could imagine that's a hurdle. And the other thing is scale up of the technology there. As a larger company, we typically have a footprint to do so, but even there, sometimes we are limited in the innovative things we could do. But especially for SMEs who don't have the means yet, they would be helped by facilities that can actually aid with scale up.
I would perhaps like to call back Tin on the discussion. Tin, are you still there? We can't hear you.
He's on
Try
the
again.
You should hear me now, right?
Yes, now you're there. And perhaps just to elaborate a bit more to what you mentioned before. So you talk about modern fermentation and how it can help valorize side stream, and how this can become a new avenue or new income for farmers. So in the light of upcoming bioeconomy strategy, how can you see the role of modern fermentation in that respect?
Yeah, thank you. So I got your question, I think. So you asked, so what could your role be of modern fermentation in the, let's say, the European protein diversification and bioeconomy strategy, correct?
Yes.
Great. Well, I think, just first of all, I think it's one of the practical tools that can really help Europe to deliver on several key policy goals at once, right? From the vision for agriculture and food to the protein diversification agenda and the bioeconomy strategy and the drive to strengthen European competitiveness and resilience, so to say. So by converting European feedstocks and side streams into high-value proteins and ingredients, fermentation really complements existing agriculture and creates new markets for farmers. And it also keeps value creation in Europe, and I think the previous question touched a bit upon that as well. And that's, for example, through European research, but also ingredients, of course, companies and products made for the European market. And like I said, I'm working for a European startup as well, and we're really experiencing this. And in that sense, I think fermentation could help to build a fairer and, let's say, inclusive transition towards a more sustainable food system, and one that works with farmers and primary producers, while giving consumers affordable and sustainable choices. So for me, it's really about partnership and modernization across the whole chain.
Thank you. I think we can build up on what Tim just said further in the conversation. Just in the interest of time, I would like to move on to the second panel and introduce now one by one, and then I will come to you all. So I have to my left Julia De Brenna, Head of Unit for Food and Retailer at the DG Grow, European Commission. Welcome, Julia. We have then Else Broekman on the other side of the table, Head of Policy Enforcement at Euroconsumers. We have again Professor Richard Harrison, Managing Director of Plant Science Group at Wageningen University. Sorry for the pronunciation, but as an Italian, it's impossible to pronounce. But we know where you're from. We have then the Danish colleague Søren Lauritsen, business attaché at the presidency, the Danish presidency of the council. Claire Scantlebury from SecGen from Europa Bio, and then dialing from Rome, Sergio Strozzi, Counselor, Head of Innovation, Technology and Startup from the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation. Welcome to you all. You see, there I manage very well the Italian. And I would also like to just welcome also the colleagues from the Argentina mission, here from Canada as well. And I don't know if I'm missing anybody else, probably not. So we are fully covering the globe. With that said, we don't have a presentation, so we just go through a round of questions. Julia, I will start with you if you don't mind. I will be soft. So I will start by saying that the biotech sector has received during the past 2 years probably unprecedented attention from the Commission. We received, as I mentioned before, the communication on the biotech biomanufacturing. We have seen then the vision for agriculture and food, slightly touch upon the food innovation as well. And we are now waiting for the bioeconomy strategy and the Biotech Act. May I just ask you, where is the shared goal behind all these initiatives, and where is the dream of the Commission in food innovation, or food biotech, if you allow me?
So yes, I think yesterday was announced the Nobel Prize for Economy, and one of the recipients was Professor Agnon, who is a French professor at INSEAD and Collège de France, and he has this theory for which he received half of one fourth, in fact, because it's half. Anyway, whatever. Complicated calculations, and he has this theory that growth in modern societies come from disruptive innovations. So he says you have to have a process of creative destruction, which then goes a lot on what Professor van der Merwe showed. Biotech is a way of creative destruction as well, and biotech is one of these technologies. Professor Aguillon is not a secret, worked also closely with Mr. Draghi for his report, and one of the sectors that is seen by the Commission and the European Union in general as really able to produce growth and sustainability together, and it was said at a certain point, is biotech. That's why it's so important. So it's not per chance, that's why, in spite of what was done last mandate, the President just pushed these 3 initiatives that are connected, because it's about innovating in life sciences, which is, and then in the subscription biotech, having really the incentives for bioeconomy in Europe, and then the Biotech Act, which is usually the acts are about making the environment conducive to growth for the sectors, addressing investment skills and regulatory gaps. I said regulatory last because this is where it gets a bit more complicated, and we've been discussing internally at political level, and you mentioned how this gap should be addressed. I must say that before the new Commission came, it was all about not health. Then it became all about health. And I know, and I see Claire smiling, there was quite a debate there, and that's what's currently being discussed on which gaps are needed to be addressed. And I guess I will get a question on food specifically, but I leave for the rest of the time.
You anticipated part of my question. But I will move.
And I will take some.
Yes, please. And please help yourself. Cheese is here to be eaten, no food waste, just to remain within the same realm. I will now move to Søren. Søren, you are presenting the Danish presidency here. I just to be a little bit still talking about the recent initiatives and recent activities. So in September, if I'm not mistaken, the Council adopted the conclusion on the EU Life Science Strategy, where the member states are calling for a broad EU Biotech Act, stressing the role of research and innovation, but also stressing the importance of having evidence-based policy in line with better regulation. It also says that this is it's a timeline opportunity, and it also counts on the collaboration within the member states and the stakeholders. So how does, this comes to my question, how does Denmark plan to keep contributing to this development, and what action do you believe are necessary to further engage the Commission, the private sector, and other stakeholders?
And how long do I have?
I will stop you at some point.
No, very good question, and good afternoon to everyone. Just for those of you who do not know me, my name is Søren Lauritsen. I'm working in the Council of Ministers, so the other co-legislator. Currently, speaking about the Danish plans is a bit sensitive because, of course, Denmark has no opinions for the moment.
We all know that.
We have the presidency of the Council and are acting according to that. With that said, I think it's fair and safe to say that there's broad support across many different council formations for something to be done in terms of biotech across sectors. And I think, and you mentioned it very well, the regulatory framework needs to be right. We need to have it growth conducive, but also commercialization inducive framework. I think the Commission started out pretty well with the communication last year. It also continued quite well during with the political guidelines of the current Commission, and then in the mission letters it kind of took a step in an interesting direction, which is it's fair enough because I'm not the one to say that the issues related to the pharmaceutical biotech are non-apparent and that we don't need to do something there. We definitely do. We need to do something there. But as the Competitiveness Council last year in November agreed upon, quite many of them at least, said, yes, we need to do something about this, and the agri-food sector, and the textiles, and all of the cross sectors. We need to touch upon the regulatory obstacles towards innovation and commercialization of these industries. And I'm trying to now, as part of the presidency, I'm chairing the Industry Working Party and the Working Party dealing with the Competitiveness Fund and the Working Party on better regulation. So all of these three working parties that I'm chairing are quite well fit for talking about the issues related to this and many other sectors, but especially also this sector. Because we have to ask whether we have the right regulatory framework. I don't think we do. Will the co-legislators be ready to do something about this? Yes, I think that's quite clear. I think the work you've done in the European Parliament states that quite clearly. There are intergroups developed, there are reports being made. The Competitiveness Council last year called for broad act to be adopted in the Industry Working Party on the 22nd of September. We also had a discussion where I counted at least 18 member states representing 85% of the populations calling for things to be done across sectors. So what do we need? Well, I think we need the Commission to deliver what it set out to do. We look very much forward to what will come in the Biotech Act. Where it will be placed in terms of negotiations in the Council depends, of course, on the content. But with two co-legislators is calling for quite similar things, I think the Commission would be ill-advised to work on something going against that. So I think, broadly, what does Denmark intend to do? Well, as I said, I have no opinions. I only represent what quite a strong majority in the Council is calling for right now. And this is that we need to do something about application procedures. We need to do things about the investments. We need to talk about how do we funnel the investments towards the scale-up activities. Do we need large test labs? I don't know. But we need to do a lot. And the first and most important thing is that we don't limit the areas of interventions to only one sector, but have a broad scope. I think this is also what is being said in the different regulatory studies you are making. So I'm very happy that GROW is invested in this work, together with Santo, is also doing a lot of great work, and across the Commission. We're looking forward to debate whatever you come up with.
No pressure. Huh? Claire, just let me bring you into the discussion, because Soren has talked about, okay, we don't have the right regulatory framework. We need a change. You as Europa Bio, what do you think we need to change? Or not at all, right?
Oh no, I think we should just keep everything the same as it currently is. I think it's really interesting for us as a cross-sectoral organisation, because we're looking at this from a very outcomes-driven basis. The things that we can do with the Biotech Act need to make a substantial difference. And we also have now a number of activities on the table. So the manufacturing communication last March was really strong, really excellent. Indeed, it went a bit sideways last autumn when we were talking about the Biotech Act scope. And then, of course, we also have simplification omnibuses kind of driving around Brussels as well at the moment. So for us, what we want to do is make sure that outcomes are not lost through the complexity and the number of legislative instruments that are currently under development. So we would like, I think the first and foremost for the regulatory elements of this, they need to be able to open markets. And that's not necessarily making something legal versus illegal. It's about, can a regulatory pathway open up and be harmonised enough across enough countries to make this economically viable? Because that's a really big bottleneck for Europe at the moment, with 27 member states doing things in often many more than 27 different ways in terms of regulatory pathways through to market. So we would really like to see Europe retain all of its high attention to safety, because that is a sales point that our members, when we talk across our members, they do not want to alter this at all. This is not about deregulation. It's about accelerating and making pathways to market more consistent and predictable, so that when innovators go to their investors, they don't have to say, I don't know, in response to any of the questions that the investors would ask. So it's about keeping the safety standards, it's about streamlining and accelerating regulatory pathways and harmonising as much as possible across member states. And without changing a single thing about safety requirements, that is how you really start to open up markets. And then that then helps us unlock how we address skills development, how we address scaling, how we address access to capital, because the presence of a market is the first thing that we have to address.
Thanks, Claire. I think many of us can agree with you, and I think it would be nice to unfold many of these concepts you just mentioned. I would like now to bring in the conversation Sergio, because you have been patiently waiting online. I think now it's your turn. So perhaps just a small intro. So you're representing the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and Italy has recently adopted this roundtable report about the internationalization of industries, where precision fermentation is listed as one of the technology enabler for sustainable and healthy food. So now I just warn you that in this city, where we talk about Italy in a more conservative, to say, tone. So now you will be a little bit of like a black sheep around the table.
All right.
But the question is, what are the drivers behind this initiative from a country like Italy?
So first of all, I would like to thank EFF, European Food Forum, for inviting me. Yes, Italy, let's say biotech sector and biomanufacturing sector is one of the key strategic industrial sectors for Italy, as much as for other European Union member states. So we are focusing very much our efforts to strengthen this sector through a connection with other specific sectors like agriculture, food, and agri-tech and food tech as well. And you have to think that we have a strong, let's say, attitude in export as country. So what we are trying to do is to find out what the enablers of the potential future strength of our biotech sector applied to and biotechnologies applied to agri-tech and food tech are. And in order to do so, we set up as Ministry of Foreign Affairs, in collaboration with other institutions and subjects and entities dealing with these sectors, this working group on the so-called internationalization of our companies in the biotechnology sector and biomanufacturing. The results we came up with is a sort of report, a strategy paper, which includes the main technologies we are focusing on. You were mentioning some of them, and I can tell you, yeah, genetics, gene editing, selection, precision fermentation, nanotechnologies are also key and crucial. In the soil productivity field, for example, microbiome-based technologies, and so on. So we are trying to focus our research, both the research and the industry, on this sector. And at the same time, as Minister of Foreign Affairs, we have to support their path to going abroad. Taking into consideration what the pain point of our biotech industries, I wouldn't say Italian, but also European, I suppose, are, which are basically small size of venture capital. We all support our biotech companies, agri-tech companies, through our national public funds very much. Italy does it through the Italian Sovereign Fund, which is CDP Venture Capital, for example. The size of private sector investments when it comes to venture capital is unfortunately very small in comparison with our competitors, the United States and Asia. I just come from an experience of 4 years as Consul General of Italy in San Francisco. So I can tell you that let's say the comparison is really hard. Although we are improving in venture capital investments in this sector, especially biotech is attracting much of our investments, but still we are in the backlog. And the other pain point is fragmentation of our of biotech companies, agri-tech companies. I don't know if it's a common feature for the other countries. I'm sure some of them have the same situation of companies, but Italian companies, farmers, agricultural companies are usually small companies, small and medium companies. We have large food companies, but not in the agricultural sector. There's fragmentation, leading to a very high difficulty in applying new technologies. It's not only biotechnology, but it's also, for example, AI solution applied to agri-tech and food tech. Our companies struggle in implementing and applying these kind of technology. So what we're doing is to help our entrepreneurs to go abroad and attract on one side foreign VCs to invest in Italy and Europe. And we do it by some specific tools like the new Italian Innovation Hub that we opened in San Francisco 2.5 years ago, innovitesf.com, where we bring startups from Italy for a mentorship bootcamp program. We did 3 programs on biotech and 3 in agri-tech, food tech. And we help them connecting with stakeholders from Silicon Valley. And then we have this Montalcini Biotech Global Tour, where we bring our agri-tech and the biotech companies in the tech events, international tech events dealing in the biotech field, to expose our entrepreneurs to the global environment, to technical partnership and commercial partnership.
Thanks, Sergio. I think that many like me are very surprised, positively surprised to hear about all these very good innovative development from Italy. And I know there are a few Italians around the table that can build up on that. You talked about venture capital. You also about difficulty of having, to attract capitals, and also how can we strengthen the role of SMEs. I will now try to bring the research perspective to the table with Richard. So you represent, of course, one of the biggest university in Europe, very strong on life science, on food, on biotech, and also many spin-offs from universities also. So you have this understanding on how difficult it can be to move from lab to the market. So in your views and based on your experience, which condition do you think we need to put in place to speed up the development of innovative food biotech?
Okay, well, thanks very much. I think there's some specific things which I'll talk about in a second, and there's some very general things. I thought the title of the panel was really interesting because it was which policy enablers does Europe need to reap the full potential, so to reap the benefits of agri-food tech. And I think those benefits we need to keep an eye on. They're not just economic growth. You could have much better services in terms of ecosystem services through use of biotechnology to improve the environment, to improve biodiversity. You could have less pollution. You could dramatically, for example, reduce the amount of pesticides. You could change land use, as we've heard, through different fermentation aspects. And all of those things won't be covered in the Biotech Act, but certainly are about that creation of a market. What kind of market do we want to create? And I think there we need to have a look at, more broadly, when we think about responsible use of technology, how we embed something like the polluter pays principle, because in doing so, and doing that in such a way like the European Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, where you're letting the polluter pay and you're making sure that then you're not putting Europe out in the cold and then just having imports replacing everything, you have a regulatory system that allows innovation and creation of a sustainable market. And I think if you want to really get, at the broadest level, a change in the use of biotechnology towards meeting our urgent climate goals, our urgent problems with biodiversity loss, that's something to keep in mind. And then when you look at then, if we had that, how would you then enable companies to develop products and set them in a market where they could experience rapid growth, because that would also create enormous opportunity if you did that. Then you're looking at some of the things that we've talked about already. So making sure that there's a robust R&D pipeline for discovery to application, making sure that there are ecosystems that are well developed for businesses to start and be supported on that innovation journey. It's not easy in biotech, and to do a lot of things you need access to a lot of data that you can't necessarily generate yourself. So shared facilities, shared resources, platforms, data, knowledge, skills training, all of those things as part of an investment package to boost competitiveness in a sustainable market, I think would be very important. And when you look at plant biotechnology, I think there are steps that the industry is already taking to make sure that the difficulties in terms of patenting and access to material and ensuring that there's freedom to operate in development. One of the great successes of breeding has been that breeders can use each other's material and advance the field together, making sure that those things are also enabling for businesses to scale in that area, making sure that there's good access to IP, that Europe has access to the right IP and can control the use of that, I think is very important. So those are the specific things that I think would really address the getting startups to be more successful and to grow more rapidly in Europe.
Thanks. I would like to follow up on that, but we will come later because I think you're opening a very interesting subject. I would like to bring to the table our last speaker to close this panel just right now, which is Els, representing the European consumers. So when we discuss about biotech, especially in this house, the perspective of the consumers is always questioned, right? And there is always a tendency to say, okay, but we need to hear what the consumer wants and what the consumers need. So in this field, of course, I've had time not to think about the latest vote that this house, sorry Martin, I know you voted rightly, let me say that, but there was a vote in this house about the nomenclature of a veggie burger. How much do you feel that your perspectives has been represented in that vote? Or how much do you think was not a consumer issue, so to say?
Specifically on the veggie
Yes,
burger.
and then we go a little bit further.
Okay. Well, specifically on the veggie burger, I mean, for us consumers, it was really a bit of a non-discussion, honestly. We were quite baffled to see the amount of time and energy that was put into this. I mean, we are very much driven also as dairy consumers to offer, valid alternatives to traditional food to consumers. We know they care about climate change. We know they care about sustainability. We know they want to do their bit. So that's and they want the exact tools to be able to do this, and that's also what we want to give to them. So we really want to offer them different options next to the normal animal proteins, and veggie burgers are part of it. Just like fermentation and even cultured meat could be part of it. So for us, the whole discussion whether sausage or hamburger, it's the shape. And we don't think it should be claimed by just meat industry alone. It is also a possibility for consumers. It should also be offered in different variants. It could even help, getting more consumers attracted to buying sustainable alternatives when they know, it's a burger, but it has vegetables in it. For us, the main issue is it should be clearly labeled. It should be clearly labeled that it is vegetarian or something else in it. But besides that, we don't really care about the name burger or sausage.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
Are there any questions from the table or online to any of our panelists? Please don't be shy, just come forward. No? Martin, please.
Just a small comment to the veggie burger discussion. Just saying that even the labeling issue can be a big one, since whenever one gets the good idea of labeling something, we're looking at huge cost also for companies around Europe. So you have to take that into consideration as well. But I would agree on otherwise.
We're talking about plant-based food. Sorry, I will come back to you. Because among the 27 member states, Denmark, of course, is a front runner in biotech. You have a very well-functioning innovation ecosystem and industry ecosystem. And also the government has taken many, initiatives to support this industry. We will think about the plant-based food fund, the CO2 tax on agriculture, very sensitive these days, as well as the recent growth strategy. Would you tell us a little bit what is the recipe for Denmark's success, and how much of this recipe, like 1-2 ingredients, can be replicable in other member states?
This is a tough question for me, since I must admit, I'm representing the Ministry for Business, Industry and Financial Affairs. But I will though say that one of the benefits of the Danish approach, like taking off my presidency hat, is that it's very cross-ministerial. We try to have very close cooperation with consumers, stakeholders, across different fields and across ministries. And there needs to be a whole of government approach to issues like this. We also did this in the life science sector, the life science industry strategy. Because I think the issue for biotech is, if we venture into the route of looking at this from the silos where we all like to be, we will miss out on, as you also said, Mr. Harrison, the economic benefits are not the only benefits. Like, benefits are crossing so many different areas. It's also a question of food security. Biotech is also undergoing one of the risk assessments for the economic security doctrine of the EU. We need industrial capacity, we need research and innovation hubs to get aligned, we need to invest in the investment journey. I think this approach of looking across all ministries at the same time is the only way forward. And right now, I think actually, not necessarily from Denmark, but the current atmosphere in Brussels is also quite conducive to doing this. I think we are quite conducive to doing things in a new way, breaking down these silos. We are looking upon different types of industries and sectors from a manifold of perspectives. So of course, agri-food is not my area of expertise. I would much rather have had my agri-food colleagues doing that. And health is not my expertise, but from the industry ministries across Europe, they are also picking up kind of the interest in fields like these and learning that we need to cooperate much closer with those line ministries that actually know something about the more targeted regulation. So, but of course I can say, yes, we need to do something about GMO, we need to do something about NTTs, we need to look at the EFSA mandate, we need to look at all of these across different fields. But I think it all starts with the whole of government approach. And I think Denmark is very good at doing that.
And I think it's a recipe that we can also apply within the Commission, perhaps, where the different DGs can collaborate a little bit closer to each other. No, that would be a good example. Sergio, do you find any familiar, I'd say, experiences with Denmark? In your experience in San Francisco, how you have approached, or how you have, how to say, profiled the Italian industry in the Silicon Valley?
An interesting thing is that I would like to share this with you, is that the European Union cooperation in San Francisco, so in the core of Silicon Valley, among member states, and in tight collaboration with the EU office in San Francisco. You know, the EU Commission has an office in San Francisco, is very deep. So we've been working together in many fields when it comes to innovation and technology to bring a new picture about Europe to our Silicon Valley partners. We wanted to do it together. Of course, there's a competition among states when as far as promoting each country's environment, each country ecosystem is concerned, but it's very useful to time by time present Europe as a whole market, united market, which is the case, even with our local partners. When it's about Denmark, usually, especially in the agricultural food industry, Denmark and Italy are pretty different as organization, text, of companies. But in the case of the biotech policies and policy making legislation and the interest of our companies and ecosystem for biotech, I think we can see that we have the same struggles, same pain points, putting together the system to strengthen it on the international market, to make it more competitive, which is actually what we as Italian government hope that the Biotech Act will do to boost the competitiveness of the biotech industry and sector in Europe. And this is something which we can share with Denmark, with other countries.
Thank you. I think there are very good elements, Claire, that you can perhaps further elaborate. You talked about the open market, and now we hear that competitiveness, of course, is the key theme here in Brussels today. But we know that scale up remain a major challenge for the biotech industry. And I just wanted to ask you, so we have excellent science, so behind scientific expertise and innovative community. What else do your companies need in order to scale up and growth?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we've talked about markets being present to pull the investment and resources towards the ability to scale up, but certainly, accelerated ability to construct facilities. We've had examples from members who took 5 years in a country that's not too far away from me across the table, 5 years to not get planning permission for something, and so they simply went and built it somewhere else. That would be a huge benefit, to accelerate planning permissions, because every day longer than it takes is extra cost. The development of skills, the bioengineering skills are hugely important, and the really important thing for Europe, and I very much take the point online as well is that they're all very transferable. As soon as you build capacity for biomanufacturing through fermentation, that is in fact an incredibly adaptable piece of infrastructure. And because we are across sectors in Europa Bio, we know that what could be used for food at one point can also be used to produce active pharmaceutical ingredients for critical medicines. So these are a hugely enabling manufacturing resource. So it should never be looked at in terms of this is just for food, this is just for medicines, because the skills and the capacity and the logistics that grow up around it are in fact multi-sectoral. So the more we can enable rapid scale up of facilities, the more we can help build the skills levels around it, the more we can support improved consistency and access to the high value feedstock that we need to fuel fermentation, the more likely those investment decisions are to be made within Europe.
Thank you, Claire. I see Anna Maria has a question, please.
Yeah, it's a question, comment. My name is Ana Maria Bravo. I'm from IFF, so one of these enzyme innovation companies, but also, as the name reflects, international flavors and fragrances. We are a 135-year-old company from the Netherlands that has been developing solutions for those sectors, but increasingly through biotech. So this is really a strategic enabler for the company's presence. I wanted to give a comment because I've been in this sector for 25 years, and I do find that this is the right time for biotech and the bioeconomy. I kind of like to say that the stars are aligning, that all these fragmented attempts to address the topics are now coming for the reasons that you just said, Søren. There's so many other benefits and clear successes for Europe through resilience, competitiveness, keeping innovation in Europe, etc. So it is a great time, and we have these policy tools in place that are really, really important. I think having been in this space for a while and seeing recently the discussion on the NGTs, I think it's great to see these terms, biotech and bioeconomy, becoming political words. The political spotlight is on this sector, which is great because it's a strategic enabling technology. But the proof is in not the pudding, but the cheese. Look what happened with the NGTs and what we discussed. So when it comes to concreteness, I'm concerned if we're really going to move this sector across that line of success so that Europe benefits from it. And quickly. I mean, let's remember there is a global race happening right now for this sector. It's not just the US with all the U-turns and complications that recently have been happening for this space there, but it's also China, India, Brazil, and even Argentina. I'm glad to see my colleagues from South America here. And so I'm really concerned about how is Europe really going to move this forward and be quick and act in an agile and speedy way to get this sector through? I can name very specific things. We talk about the regulatory approvals, we talk about financing. We actually, as a company with our partner from Finland, we didn't get the funding because it's limited amounts that are there, but we decided to invest into building a plant for biopolymers in Finland. So we are doing our investments in the EU because we think that this is the right market to do these things, but there's limited amounts. The ambition is not big enough for this sector to really keep us growing here. But on top of that, there's very specific things, and this is my last point, very, very fundamental things for the success of this sector. Access to feedstock. The bioeconomy and using biotech for the bioeconomy rely on renewable feedstock, and this is plant-based material, plant-based carbon. How is Europe going to deal with this issue? It's a sensitive issue because there have been historical concerns about food security of using this feedstock, but actually plant sugars are available today. They're commercially at scale available, and sugar use is decreasing in Europe, so we do have this feedstock that's available. Sugar facilities are closing down because there's not enough demand. So we really need to focus on enabling access to the feedstock for this bioeconomy to succeed. So that was my one comment that I wanted to give a perspective from my company. Thank you.
Thanks, Anomalia. It's a very valid comment. Would anybody from the Commission, Julia, but also looking, just bringing the others participants to the table? Fabio, you represented DG Agri. Would you like to
Yeah, no,
just
first of
jump
all,
on the
by coincidence, we have 3 colleagues from the Commission, so we are already practicing the whole of government approach at whatever level we're just speaking to each other, so the stars are aligning with our. No, I was taken by, in fact, the intervention from our international, so I didn't want to transform this into a country-specific discussion, but in fact, bouncing on the Danish presidency, let's say, story about the success in Denmark and the way of working there. So I was wondering, in fact, and it's a question directly to Mr. Brozzi, if I got the name right.
Sergio.
Sergio, yes. So how this is going, in Italy when it comes to, you mentioned Agri-Food, Agri-Tech as one of the topic, let's say, one of the sector where you have that highlighted as for growing opportunity on this sector, but as colleagues around the table has hinted to, Italy has been quite conservative when it comes to food innovation. And I was really curious to hear your views about how the Italian government is coming together into, at the same time, let's say, pushing on the accelerator and the brake at the same time. I don't want to be provocative, it's really a genuine curiosity, and maybe it can serve also as a good example for moving conversation forward elsewhere.
So, well, I can tell you that we are very much searching for best practices and technologies to apply to our industry, and both in agriculture, in food processing and manufacturing. So we are interested, and we are actually working, some of the companies in Italy are working in the sector I mentioned before. So we don't have a bias towards, as far as specific techniques or technologies in the biotech sector are concerned. We are aware and very cautious about the effects that these technologies can have at the same time. So let's say it's a positive attitude with a consciousness on the effects side. But still, we are, both our research system, universities like Bologna University, but not only, of course, are working to improve the quality, the efficiency of our production, of our industry, by applying new technologies, discovering new technologies, and doing research on, for example, genetics, as I mentioned before. So let's say we are open, and we want to see what the discussion, how the discussion will go on, basically.
Yeah, in listening mode.
Listening mode, yeah. But at the same time, working on making our ecosystem more competitive, especially when it comes to opening up to investments and investments attraction from abroad.
Very good.
If I may add another question, because I have two, in fact, and this I wanted to, instead, to open up a bit of discussion around the table, so see what maybe Claire can tell me about. I always want to spring on something that Stefano said about one of the hurdles and the stumbling blocks along the way to make, to foster the sector. You talked about fragmentation of the industry, the difficulty of a small and medium size, well, also maybe more the small and medium enterprises to take up technology, etc. So what is the issue there? Because there is a risk. I mean, this doesn't seem to it seems to collide, in fact, with the fact that the texture of the European industrial capacity is made of 90% of small and medium enterprise. So are we going to solve it? So are we saying that there is no, I mean, what are the prospects it's a collaboration, it's merging, is upscaling, but then it wouldn't be subject to a power grab also of certain technologies by other highest competitors. I'm talking about, I'm more familiar with the Agri-Food sector, for example, where you have a massive number of small and medium enterprises, so and a few big players. So what does it mean? Are this technology going to be, just used by those big players?
We had some interesting discussions in prep because we have a biomanufacturing summit tomorrow, and one of the really big discussions that came up was that the industrial biotech and the biosolutions angle democratizes the ability of novel innovators to enter the market. It really opens up a lot of new avenues for smaller innovators, but they need to be able to reach market in a time that is financeable. So Europe has a huge number of really innovative biotech companies that are springing up in the industrial biotech space now. And some of our fastest growing regions are in countries like France, which you would not expect food-based biotech to be springing up in. But it really is. And it reminds me in a way of the original health SME waves that came in the 1990s and the early 2000s. So we really need to harness this. This is not a wave that we can afford to just let dissipate. We have to, as you saw from health, it has a huge legacy impact on larger companies, your ability to access services and products, creation of infrastructure and economic activity. So for the small companies, we're really pleased to see things like the 28th regime coming back into discussion, because why would we not enable a small company to be able to access the whole of the EU without having to do something 27 times? The Startup and Scale Up Act has a really big potential. The ability for them to get through a very complex regulatory process that is often very opaque faster and with more clarity. All of these things we can do through the legislative instruments that we have on the table right now. So I don't see any barriers except the ones that we have created ourselves, but now have the opportunity to remove. And even without things like the Capital Markets Union, if you can create an attractive route to market for a small company, money will come. It might not be as much as you see in really big markets like the US, however, it will improve. So everything is possible. There is nothing that is impossible to open up this market at the moment.
Good. We have a line of question, which is great. I hope the gentleman will let me go first to Els.
No, I just wanted to step in because we've been talking a lot about policy enablers here, and that was the scope of this forum. But one thing that I'm missing a little bit here is exactly the consumer. And I guess some of you are surprised to see consumer group here, and I totally get it. Most organizations tend to stay away of biotechnology, too risky, too dangerous. But actually, yes, Euroconsumers firmly disagree with that. So if you give me just a few minutes, I would like to say why we care and maybe what consumers could also do for biotechnology. Well, actually, earlier this year, we issued a position paper based on 1 year of research and extensive consumer surveys. But it was really exploring whether we should put cultivated meat and novel proteins more in general on consumers' plates. So my perspective will be a little bit focused on that. And it was really driven by our mission. What we want to do is we want to offer valid alternatives to consumers. Like I said, we know they care, we know they're looking for tools, so we see it as our duty to really empower them with, affordable, sustainable alternatives. And there, novel proteins, novel food is a very interesting one for us because it's good for the planet, for animal health, for animal welfare, for your health, for food resilience. But what triggered us even more into looking into this, cultured meat and novel foods thing is that when we run this large survey, and you have this really hardcore people saying, look, we will never go away from eating meat. Even within these hardcore no-sayers, there was 43%, also Italians, saying that they would be willing to give it a try if it's safe. So it really shows the potential of biotechnology for making, diets more sustainable and offering valid choices to consumers. There was a second reason why we were particularly interested in it. It's because of the competitiveness potential of this industry, and it's the buzzword, but it might sound as a surprise, but also consumers care about this competitiveness, because actually we really need vibrant markets that are able to deliver this kind of technology innovation to consumers. And that's also our mission as a consumer group, to make sure that's that. And novel foods, for us, it really triggered us as an item where we risk losing out again, and we mentioned it here, like competition is fierce, but it could also be a way where we can find the good solutions. It was mentioned here, we have this kind of innovation with us here in Europe, but we know how difficult it is to go from startup to scale up. So the question is, what do we do? And what can we do as a consumer organization? And of course, I can talk here about the need for funding, public and private, fair competition, open source research and development, improving the approval process by EFSA, making it smoother, easier, but not giving in on safety standards. But I would really like to use my final minutes here to also focus on an enabler, I think, that is often overlooked, but will be very crucial, and that's actually the consumers. When we were looking at cultured meat, and I have papers here if anyone would like to have a look at it. It can be fascinating and have so much potential as we want, but it will never fly if you don't have the consumers buy-in. They need to trust it, they need to support it, they need to embrace it. And for that, at least when we hold them on novel foods, their checklist was very clear. It needs to be safe, it cannot be more expensive, it needs to taste like the real thing. The cheese is excellent, by the way. I can't tell the difference.
That's why you're keeping it with you, right?
Yeah, and I'm really, after this meeting, I will try all of this. It needs to be clearly communicated. But unlocking the potential of biotechnology, I think it's not only about having consumers buy in, we can even go a step further. We really believe at Euroconsumers that empowered consumers can make a difference. They can shape markets, and with their behavior, consumers can give a signal to producers, to supermarkets, that they are serious about getting innovative alternatives, innovative food, and that they are willing to reward and support those manufacturers who also embrace it. And that's the potential that consumers can bring in together with consumer organizations. So I would say, whatever you do in biotechnology, and all the rest that was said here, is extremely important, and we fully support it, and we can go more into that. But I would say make it also consumer-proof and bring them at the table, because they're not a hurdle. They're not a hurdle towards more competitiveness. If anything, they can really become an industrial asset. So.
Thanks a lot, Els, for making your voice heard. I think it's important because probably you are one of the few consumers that is able to be so open about what the consumers want. I always say that perhaps in this world we are all consumers, but we are privileged consumers. So I think at some point it will also be good to hear what the more remote located consumer feel about food biotech. I know that the latest EFSA barometer on food safety, food biotech scored the lowest in terms of consumer concern. So it's good that you are actually elaborating more on that concept. So thanks. I have a few questions that are waiting, right? Richard, you wanted to intervene in the discussion earlier.
If possible.
Yes.
I think maybe just starting from the consumer, I think it's going to be a pivotal 20 years, because if we look at all the signs in terms of demand for biomass, and that then at some point turns into food, the demand's going to go up across the board. As we start looking at transitioning to a circular bioeconomy, getting off fossil fuel, the demand for biomass is going up. And all of the evidence from the European Environment Agency, the JRC, says by 2050, we're going to have a shortage in Europe of biomass. So that affordable feedstock isn't going to be anytime soon if we don't do something about looking at how we best use our biomass. And that's maybe where these hundreds of thousands of European farmers come in, because there is a value proposition that works for farmers, which would be to create high-value feedstocks for more efficient production of food. But that's only going to happen if you have the right that holistic regulatory landscape. And I think so. It's important to really take that integrated view, because there is so much potential for sustainable economic growth. But if we look where we're going at the moment, we are going to massively overshoot in terms of what we want and what we need to do and what we actually can do in terms of production of biomass. And if we do it wrong, it will cost the environment. We don't want that. So I just thought it was interesting to try and weave those the 2 and 3 perspectives together.
Very valid. Pete, I think you want to build on that. Or...
No, I'd like to follow up a little bit back to the heading of this panel here on the EU Biotech Act. It was said, I think the IFF colleagues said it, that the stars are right to have something like an EU Biotech Act. And I would agree with that, because I've seen this whole landscape change from the mid-80s to the mid-90s when the regulations worked. They were simple. I myself signed market approvals for GMOs, which would be impossible these days. So for a while we have seen things working well, and then the mid-90s, just the atmosphere of Europe changed. And ever since the regulatory bar has been higher, so that only the big biotech companies can comply with it and not public research anymore. And it also has gotten very fragmented. So I think the time is right to have an EU Biotech Act that could help streamline all that. In this, I have a plea for the Commission and for the co-legislator, the Commission, to please explain to people, it is Biotech Act and Innovation Act and all these others, what they actually do. Will they replace? Will they complement? What are they going to do? You have a nice website for the public consultation on the EU Biotech Act. I think it would benefit from some explanation there. And then to the Parliament and the Council, what I've seen happen so often, and the NGT proposal was mentioned, a proposal is submitted to the co-legislator, and the Commission has done a lot of hard work in doing an impact assessment. They looked at all the angles and so forth. And then something happens that I see in so many national and European parliaments. Members of the parliament start throwing in amendments, just like that. The kitchen sink and everything. And I think that's a disaster, because it affects the credibility of the system. And actually, you have an obligation, you have the interinstitutional agreement, where you have an obligation that if you make substantial proposals for substantial changes, that you do an impact assessment. So here, an NGT proposal, which was about biosafety. Parliamentarians threw in patents. They threw in lots of things that were not there.
It's called democracy.
I've heard it a lot. But here you have the obligation, and you even have an office here. You have the European Parliamentarian Research Service. They can do the impact assessment for you. They have not received a request from committee since 2017 or so. So what is happening here is that just amendments are being thrown in that have nothing to do with the original proposal, and it becomes a mess. And this is not only on the European level. I've seen this in many national parliaments as well. Actually, 11 o'clock in the evening, someone just throws in something that just stays there. And it's not only the Parliament, the same with the Member States. And I know you can't speak on behalf of those who don't do their job, but it's happening the same thing. Amendments are being thrown in without a proper assessment. If those parliamentarians would have proposed to put in patents or labeling or whatever there is, something that was not part of the proposal, would have done their job in doing the assessment. Or if you would have asked your colleagues, can you give me the assessment that underpins this? But it's not happening. People are tiptoeing around each other. And as a result, everybody just keeps throwing in everything. So I think the EU Biotech Act could work if we understand what it will do, what it's intended to do, and if the co-legislator does its homework as agreed in the interinstitutional agreement. And I'm so happy that you're not one of those MEPs who runs away shortly after the introduction to a session here.
I didn't dare. Can I answer?
Yes, of course.
Well, if you expect me to defend my colleagues, I will not. Well, this is a confession. What I found that you might not know this, but I'm a self-proclaimed Tsar of simplification in my group, the Liberal group, because when I realized that the path we were on here, I realized that we might as well start to take ourselves seriously, and this is what we're trying to do now. It was a big shock to me to realize that we don't have any impact assessments at all on anything, not on this thing, not on many other areas. So it's it's parliamentarism, yes, and I guess we have to live with it, but we can surely improve. And the whole exercise of simplification, which is going on right now, after the Draghi report, is an existential exercise, if you ask me, because this is all about our credibility also looking forward. So the good news is that the Biotech Act will be one of the first big acts to showcase that we can do things differently. And that's why I really want to take part in this work, because this so co-aligned with my work as simplification side as well. So this is basically the big case, which we actually. That's why I started by telling you that the whole idea of actually having also an industrial and growth-oriented commissioner involved is key to the whole exercise, because that's all proved to us that the Commission means business here, that they really want to live up to their own promises of getting things simpler and more efficient. So I cannot promise you that we will end there, but I can promise that we will work for it.
Julia, would you like to compliment?
Well, on a number of things. First of all, we still don't know what will be in the Biotech Act. But I think it's very important that we had a lot of debate among all stakeholders on what should be there, and that even the country, even before just said what they were hoping to have there, and that's a way to work, because this is the definition in between silos in endeavor, and that's important. I wanted to thank Elsa for saying the consumer is key. But and it's a thing I always tell, this is not about cultivated meat. This is about a lot of things that the consumer doesn't see. And it was nice that you said some of these cheeses are made with one technique and some with another technique. In the United States, you probably get always the same techniques, and to keep this diversity is very important. And Richard, you said, we will have more demand, with more constraints in terms of animal welfare, of sustainable use of lands, etc. So it's very important that biotech is not about substituting. Biotech is accompanying in a better way a change that is already happening. We have demographic change. We have a lot of people using some medications that lead them to want to eat differently, and that already the food industry is researching on that. And this is why biotech is a way of accompanying that. One of the things also, biotech is a way of having this cheese last longer, which means less resources, less waste, and that's important to see for the consumer. I always ask, have you noticed your yogurt lasts longer? That's not your fridge. It's not your fridge. Or it's not, but they are selling something half rotten. This is biotech.
It's a good example.
We can write it now.
And I think the people should realize this is biotech. You are not throwing away half of the yogurt. Have you noticed that you are more keen to eat just plain yogurt with less sugar? Because it's done differently. Because the taste has got more mainstream. That means less sugar, you said it, less sugar. And the biotech industry needs desperately sugar. And you have the sugar producers saying, people are eating less sugar. And this is what also regulators and politicians and consumer associations have to do for the consumer, just to get the taste the consumer wants, but also for the consumer to understand this is not about just you have to eat fake meat. No, this is about you want to eat differently, you need to eat differently, more people want to eat, and this is a way of accompanying it. And the Biotech Act is quite key, because there are a lot of things we can do better and differently.
Thanks, Julia. I will give the last word to Søren.
Yes.
Then we wrap up with you.
Yes, thank you. And the fridge story, you can write it into the preamble.
And your colleagues.
Yes, yes. No, but and I completely agree. We need to pay greater attention to the impacts of what we're doing. Impacts, though, also meaning both benefits and burdens. It can go, of course, both ways. And yes, we need to prove that we also take that into account. And I think that we completely agree with that. The co-legislators that we have to do something. And we have agreed since the interinstitutional agreement in 2016, although we have not deemed it necessary to conduct such an impact assessment since then. So I think since you are one of the ones reading the interinstitutional agreement, you are probably also one of the ones who have delved into the political dynamics of why this has not happened. Although I think we have to do something about that. We need to. It's a change of working methods, it's a change of culture, it's a change of mindset, not just throwing, as you said, into the sink, but keeping a bit more attention to what will it actually impact. I think the Commission is also doing a lot of work with new SME tests, new competitiveness checks for industrial sectors that may be more inflicted by certain kinds of legislation than others. You need to, or the new annexes 456 that you need to make an impact assessment. So there is definitely a focus on this, and there needs to be. So I agree. And I think one last point from me on the on what we do in Denmark. I think apart from the whole of government approach, I think we're also just plainly very pragmatic. Investments will be made in biotech plans or planning. I mean, investments will be made, innovation will be made. NGTs are already used, also in Europe. It's just slow. It's slow in Europe, and if we don't do anything, then investments will be made elsewhere. So this kind of pragmatic mindset, yes, cultivated meats are difficult, but it's not only about this. It's much more than that, and we can choose the pathway where we do something about it, or we can accept that those investments and that food security will just happen elsewhere. It's not like biotech, like you outlined it perfectly. Biotech innovation has happened for hundreds of years, and will it be in Europe in the future? I mean, that depends on what we are bold enough to do now. So it will be somewhere. Let's make sure that it's also in Europe. Yeah.
On that wise words, I would like to thank you all for the time. We also know that today there is a strike, so we are so happy to see this forum so packed. Before I pass the words to Martin for the closing remarks, I just would like to say thanks to the engine of the forum, which is Rizella and Resi. Also, just to remember that there are upcoming events from the forum. So there will be a November's event on US tariff, and two in December, World Without Wine and Animal Welfare, following in January with a meeting with the CEOs. Please, Rizella and Resi are there if you would like to joining the forum. We are seeking for more members, so we can do this and more together. And then thanks to our host, Morten, I will give the floor to you.
Yes, I'll be very brief so you can go home.
Without a bus.
Without a bus, on foot, no. Well, just two things to wrap up. I think a lot of very wise things has been said already. I think that one of the key findings for me, and one of the things that I really realized going into this work, is that what we all need in order to improve this area, in order to move forward, is to be better in explaining. And I think this marvelous anecdote you just told us kind of told the whole story, because when we have political problems, when I have problems involving my colleagues, when you have problems with the consumers perhaps, when you have problems involving the political environment, I think it's all about lack of knowledge. People simply have grasped the potential and the perspectives of this important issue yet. So I guess we all have a task here moving forward, and that is to be much better in explaining why this is so important. So that would be my plea to you leaving this wonderful meeting, is that go out there. You're doing already, I know, but we will improve ourselves also on this, to explain in this house
why this Biotech Act needs to be something different, as I just explained. Needs to be the showcase that we can actually do better regulation, that we can do things more efficient and more simple. And the good news is, of course, that we also created a task force or interest group working with this, with the cooperation from industry, the whole industry, and also with a lot of consensual work also in this house from a lot of my colleagues. And the second thing I would say is that I think this you can't overestimate just how important this issue is and this sector is for the growth agenda. And I think this discussion today proved that this is not only about food, it's about a whole range of other things which have to work together in order to pave the way for this important task. So thank you very much for attending, and thank you very much for me. Therese, you were a great moderator, I must say. I was actually planning to leave a little earlier, but I didn't dare because it's also important.
And now you have cheese to eat.
Yeah, now we have cheese to eat. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry, let's take a picture all together with the speaker because somewhere.
And thanks to the colleagues online, which I think that are
Eravamo le